What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with another episode of WNBA Today on CLNS. Here, just moments after the Phoenix Mercury beat the Minnesota Lynx 84-76 in Game 3 on their home court to take a 2-1 series lead in the WNBA semifinals. And they're now just one game away from the WNBA finals. And this game had everything. It had some incredible individual performances. And it also had the theatrics that were headlined by Minnesota Lynx longtime head coach Cheryl Reeve getting ejected with just a few seconds left to play in this game. She talked post game. She sounded off about the officiating. You can watch the full press conference on WNBA Today on CLNS on our channel. We post all of the press conferences, so go find those as well. But this game, really, the big storyline for me is that Napheesa Collier walks away injured, and Cheryl Reeve says post game that this was potentially a fractured leg, a fractured ankle. It looked like she rolled her ankle pretty badly on the final play of the game, which was Alyssa Thomas stealing the ball from her. And honestly, from different angles, it looks like different things. I lean that it was a foul, but and I can see how in some angles it looked like a clean steal too. You can watch the play for yourself. It's all over social media, or you can take my word for it that it was pretty 50-50 in my eyes. But I've seen a lot of people be very passionate in both directions so far. But the reality is that this Minnesota Lynx team looked to be coasting. They were up 1-0 in the series, and they were up 20 points in game 2. And you think to yourself at that point, like, obviously, right? The Lynx were the best team of the WNBA all season long. They're mostly fully healthy. I mean, DiJonai Carrington's out for the playoffs with a foot injury, but they have their starting five, their returning starting five from last season. And they should be able to put this Phoenix Mercury team away. And the Mercury, they were the 4th seed. They had some great stints throughout the season, but they also had some inconsistencies that the Lynx just didn't face to that extent. So I think this was a classic 1-4 matchup where Minnesota was the heavy favorite, and they're up by 20, and it looks like it's going to be exactly as one would expect. And obviously, they mount this incredible comeback, and then Sammy Whitcomb hits this clutch 3-pointer to tie the game off an Alyssa Thomas offensive rebound. And next thing you know, we all know it. I made a separate video about this. So you can watch that reaction video, but they win that game and they tied up 1-1. And I thought to myself, if I'm on the Lynx, you already feel like the way you lost the finals last year was heartbreaking. You feel like you should have won. It came down to a bad call. And you want to come back and send a statement in these playoffs. And so the last thing you want to do is blow a 20-point lead at home. And they do that, right? And that's part of the game. It's part of basketball. And what the big story is how do you respond to that? And I thought in this game, the Mercury were more of the aggressors for a lot of many stretches. The offensive rebounding, for example, down the stretch was a huge problem, right? The Phoenix Mercury get 2 offensive rebounds in the final minute on the same possession, and that was kind of the ball game there a little bit. You can't talk about this game without talking about Satou Sabally, who had 15 points in the 4th quarter. She missed just 1 shot. I mean, just a massive Satou Sabally game, and she's been my X factor for this Phoenix Mercury team all season long. She doesn't quite have the playoff experience that Alyssa Thomas and Kahleah Copper have. But when she's on, and she's kind of unstoppable. And in this game, she was Phoenix Mercury's leading scorer, and her performance was big time. And that's 2 games in a row where Satou Sabally has been big time. And so it's not her alone, because they have a big 3 on this Phoenix Mercury team that I think honestly was underrated. And it's hard to say that when they're all highly rated players. They were all stars and have accomplished a lot in this league. But in this game, their big 3 combined for 65 points. And Satou Sabally led the way with 23 points, did most of her damage in the final period, where the Mercury also outscored the Lynx 21-9. So that's consequential. Kahleah Copper, who has been, coming back from knee injury, she's not been herself for a lot of the season. This is ultimately, I think, at her best, one of the best scorers in the WNBA. She's a former Finals MVP. She's a big reason why the U.S. women's team won the gold medal game against France in Paris. Like, she's elite, right? And she's talked about it post game on SportsCenter. Like, she had to remind herself that she is this, she is that player. And in this game, she's 21 points on 9 of 13 shooting, and she did most of her damage in the first half. And so everybody kind of takes their moments, picks their spots on this roster. And again, you can't talk about any of it without talking about Alyssa Thomas, who just puts together these ridiculous stats, just ridiculous. 21 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists, 5 steals, and 2 blocks for Alyssa Thomas. And no steal will be more on television, will be more discussed than her final steal, where she basically picked off, deflected the ball from Napheesa Collier. The deflection itself was clean. I think afterwards she kind of rammed her leg into Napheesa. So whether or not that's a foul, like I would lean that it is a foul, but I understand how it wasn't called or it wasn't seen that way from various angles. But she lays it in. It's kind of the exclamation point on another massive big time performance from Alyssa Thomas. And she's just had so many of these that you're kind of just waiting for her to win it all because she's been so close so many times. She's been so big time in the postseason. She passed Sue Bird today for playoff assists, which is, again, Sue Bird is one of the all-time greatest point guards ever. Like, that's kind of an incredible accolade. So it's those three that get the credit for this game. Alyssa Thomas, Satou Sabally, and Kahleah Copper, which when that big three was assembled in the offseason, everybody wondered, like, was this Phoenix Mercury team gonna be a contender? And you never know how things are going to fit. But they're three versatile players, and in this game, it all came together exactly as you'd hope. And the Lynx big three combined for 43 points as compared to 65. So they were not as great in this game. And Napheesa Collier has been really quiet down the stretch of these postseason games in the fourth quarter. So there was a stat at some point that was like she's 2 of 8 in fourth quarters in this series, which is not like her. She's normally a pretty clutch player, but she has 17 points on 8 of 15 shooting, 3 assists, 4 turnovers in this game. Courtney Williams had 14 points on 6 of 16 field goals. She only had 1 turnover, but it was very costly. It was in the final minute. It was it was not a dead ball turnover, which is the problem. And Kayla McBride, 12 points on just 3 of 10 shooting. So not enough, I think, from those three. You're gonna need more. Ultimately it's gonna come down to like your stars versus my stars, your role players versus my role players. And the Lynx probably have the better supporting cast, but so far the Mercury's big three has been better than Minnesota's. Big shout out to 2 players off the Lynx bench that I think were a big reason why they were in it for most of this game is Napheesa Heidemann, who was my pick for 6th player of the year. She finishes with 19 points on 7 of 12 shooting. Ultimately was their leading scorer, and she's just shown time and again that she can come in and provide a huge boost. And then Masha Kliandikova ended up playing the bulk of the post player minutes. I mean, she had 18 points on 4 of 6 shooting, 3 blocks, and Alana Smith, defensive player of the year, played just 12 minutes in this one. So I do think Kliandikova has been a better matchup in this series. She has been active. She had 2 big buckets late in the fourth quarter that if they win this game, that's what I spend this video talking about. But they lose this game. And so instead, this video is titled, "Is it over for the Minnesota Lynx?" And the reason that it could be over is because right now their backs are against the wall. They only, they lose one more game and that's it. This historic regular season that they have results in massive disappointment. And Napheesa Collier might be done for the postseason. I mean, Cheryl Reeve said that she could have a fracture. I think even if it's not a broken bone, it looked like a pretty bad ankle sprain. She was crying after that, as she was heading her way to the locker room. She was struggling to put like complete weight on her leg. I mean, she was walking, but with the assistance of 2 other people. So I would say at this point, it looks pretty likely that she might miss some time. And if she misses time, I just don't know that this team has the firepower to withstand a Mercury team that has come together in the last few weeks here. Like a really, really come together. Alyssa Thomas, Satou Sabally, and Kahleah Copper are looking like every bit the players that Phoenix hoped they had, Matt Ishbia hoped he had when they acquired them in this offseason. So in this game, I thought the defensive intensity was through the roof for Phoenix. I thought Alyssa Thomas just ended up having her imprints all over this game, particularly defensively. I think she outplayed Napheesa Collier for large stretches of this game, especially down the stretch. And ultimately, like there was a heated MVP dialogue. I voted for Asia Wilson. I felt like all 3 of them were phenomenal candidates. I went back and forth in my order between those 3 a billion times. And tonight, Alyssa Thomas was the MVP. All 3 players played, A'ja Wilson had a tough game 1 versus tough game 3 versus the Indiana Fever. I talk about that in a different video that you can check out. Napheesa Collier had a relatively quiet game here. I mean, she was efficient, but she didn't have her imprint on this game the way that Alyssa Thomas did. So for all the discourse around her getting MVP votes, I think she's shown in these playoffs like just how valuable she is. And she steps it up in the postseason always. That's part of her MO. So I think the Minnesota Lynx are in really big trouble because it's one thing to be down 2-1. It's another thing to be down 2-1 the way that it went down for them, where they blew a 20-point lead. And then in this game, they really falter down the stretch and Cheryl Reeve gets ejected and loses her cool. And most importantly, Napheesa Collier hobbles out. So I'm worried about them. I think right now, I would say the Phoenix Mercury have all the momentum. They have all the confidence. Everything's clicking. You can see that the pieces are coming together as they envisioned. I think this team is going to come together and win game 4. And it's going to be a very, very disappointing finish for Minnesota. Obviously, anything can happen in basketball. So as much as I feel like right now, sitting here just minutes after this game ended, the tides have turned, and the way that it's hard to believe that just a couple nights ago the Lynx were on the verge of being up 2-0 in the series, and all they had to do is close it out, and they'd be heading to the finals with home court. And now we are in a vastly different situation. But that's why the playoffs are so unpredictable, and that's why you cannot let your foot off the gas, because you let your foot off the gas with a 20-point lead and you can't always bounce back from it. You can't always rectify it. This was a much closer game. They had their opportunities. They led for large stretches. But ultimately, Phoenix was the better team in this one. And so Satou Sabally had 2 big threes back to back. She hit her free throws. She was everywhere. And they call her the unicorn for good reason. And when she's feeling it the way that she is, where she's scoring at all 3 levels, there's not much you can do. And the players that guarded her tried. Bridget Carlton tried. Whoever was assigned to her tried. But it's hard because you also have to worry about Kahleah Copper, who was in an enormous kind of like beautiful offensive rhythm. And then obviously Alyssa Thomas is going to be the center of everything that you do and everything that you scheme defensively. So I'm curious to see what happens here. Cheryl Reeve was absolutely livid post game. She didn't take questions. She basically just sounded off about the officiating and about the fact that it was malpractice to have the 3 officials that they had today, that the physicality has gotten out of hand. One thing that I'll say is I think coaches across the league can probably all agree that the physicality is too much. I think most fans feel that way as well. I'm always a big fan of the physicality when I'm watching basketball, but it does seem like it's gotten to a point. You've heard WNBA fans talk about this for a long time, but you're starting to see kind of league consensus around this. So I do wonder if the league is going to change the way that physicality is officiated. I think Alyssa Thomas is probably the biggest beneficiary right now of that physicality being allowed. You saw how much that impacted Phoenix in that first round series against the Liberty, and you certainly saw it again tonight. So it might just be over for the Minnesota Lynx, but they could also bounce back. I think the task is really tall without Napheesa. It's going to come down to the others. They still have some great players on their team. Jessica Shepard has filled in pretty well during the regular season, but it's different. It's different in the postseason against a Phoenix Mercury team. It's different than just everything that we have seen during the year when you're playing against less effective groups as well. So that's it for now. Subscribe to WNBA Today on CLNS Media and leave us a comment, leave us a like, let me know what other videos you'd like to see in the coming days. We'll have more coverage throughout the postseason.